All right, hello, my name is Pam. I'm a first year law student here in Miami, and it's crazy to think that I'm gonna be a second year law student in 2 weeks. That's crazy. I don't want summer to end. This is actually tragic. I'm not okay, but you will be. I'm just not ready for summer to be over. I loved my summer, and yeah, I did not take any classes this summer because after 1L, I was so done. I was exhausted. It's a lot. But if you're watching this video, that means you're probably going to be a 1L, or maybe you just want to do better as a second year. And I am so excited for you. If you just got into law school, congratulations. I am so happy for you. Getting into law school is such a big achievement. Like, that's something that you should be proud of, no matter the law school, no matter the location. If it wasn't your first choice, if it wasn't even your second or third choice, doesn't matter. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're going to make the most of the situation. Like, the experience is going to be what you make of it. And so something that I wish that I would have known is how to study before law school, because I feel your first semester of law school, like fall semester, is where you really need to quickly learn how to study efficiently. And the way that I feel like law schools teach you how to study is not effective, at least the way my law school taught me. It just wasn't what I needed. They didn't even teach me how to outline during orientation, which is like a whole other thing. But I feel like I definitely found what works for me. And so these are just things that I wish I would have done earlier, because I did pretty well during midterms fall semester, but I was definitely working on catching up at the end of that. Like, I finally like found my groove right before midterms, but not for all of my classes. So I'm happy with my grades for fall semester and spring semester, obviously, but I just wish I would have known what I was doing my first 2 months, because those were really steep learning curves for me. And if you're in law school, you've probably always been an academic achiever. You probably got really great grades in undergrad, and you're probably just a really smart person. So if you go into law school with that and knowing that like school has always been your skill, law school will humble you. The pipeline of 4.0 undergrad to mediocre law student is fat. Like, you just realize that law school is a completely different game, and C's get degrees. So if you get a C in law school, fear not, that is normal. These are things that I did to be above the curve at my law school. Every law school has a different curve, and if you don't know, if you're a first year law student and you don't really understand how the curve works, every law school sets a curve, which is basically like everyone or most people in this section will fall into this curve. It's at my school, it's a 2.0. Most people get C's. Other schools are a little bit more generous, which is nice. And their curve might be like a 2.5 or a 2.75, maybe even a 3.0. And that's the curve. So even if your paper is an A+ paper, there's only 1 A per class. And then maybe like 10 B's per class, and then the class is only 70 students. So if there's only 1 A and 10 B's, the majority of people are gonna get C's, and then maybe a few stragglers will get D's and or F's. So that's kind of how I would explain it. You could probably find a more eloquent version on chat or literally anywhere else. Listen, if you're on the curve and you're not above it, you're doing what you have to do. If you're on the curve and you know you're not above it but you're not below it, you're doing good. So don't let that get to you. You just have to pass law school. You have to get through it, and you're gonna get your degree. I know it can be really scary to think about, but hopefully this gives you like a little bit of hopefully I can assuage that. People do fail out in law school, but you really have to be like somebody that has like no idea what they're talking about, if that makes sense. Also, law schools don't just like kick you out off bat. You get on probation first. So your GPA has to be super low to just like be academically dismissed. If you're at like a 1.8 and not a 2.0, that means you probably got straight C's and maybe like 1 or 2 C minuses, and then at that point you would be on academic probation. If you have like a 1.0, then you would be academically dismissed, which God forbid that ever happens, but which you could always appeal. So at least at my law school, there's a process, but let's avoid that. finding out how to study and how to study efficiently and in a way that works well for you is so important. I wish I would have learned that sooner, because I feel like a lot of law schools will basically just say like, okay guys, do your readings, get the rule from the readings, and that was so unhelpful for me. My controversial law school opinion is that readings do not help, and they are not the pathway to success. Because in order to do well, you have to know how you're going to be tested. So in law school, how does testing work? You will have 3 hours. My school does 3 hours. You have 3 hours to answer a set of multiple choice questions and then to write an essay response. The multiple choice questions are based on fact patterns that you would kind of imagine are like potential cases. So for example, in a torts class that every first year law student takes, and so in that class you're going to learn about battery, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, and things like that. So you have to read a fact pattern. Can I tell you, these fact patterns are insane. So it's gonna be like a railroad and a train was on the train tracks, and then it hit a car, and then the car exploded, and one of the scrapple pieces hit somebody on the face that was just like a standby, like a bystander. Listen, okay, English is not my first language. So the bystander got hit in the face, and then they tripped, and them tripping caused them to be blind. So those are kind of like the fact patterns that you're gonna see in law school, which I know is kind of crazy to think about, but when you get that, you're gonna have to be able to understand what the tort was and the call of the question. So if the question is asking you for elements, anything like that, you just have to learn how to answer these kind of questions. Alongside that, you're gonna have the essay. So pretend that is an essay. Your job is to identify every single tort in like 3 different paragraphs. So typically your essay questions are gonna be 1 page long, so they're about like, you know, a page long. It's gonna be a whole story of somebody that was at a party and then a million things went wrong, and as a law student you have to identify every single tort that occurred, and then defenses. So you have to say, what is a defense for negligence, something like that. So that is pretty much how you're going to be tested. Nowhere in that do you have to know Pennoyer v. Neff. Girl, when I catch you, Ricky, nowhere in that are you gonna have to cite cases. You're never gonna have to cite a case. You're never gonna have to refer to a justice's opinion. You're never gonna have to memorize any actual like case fact. You only need the rule. So these cases that you're reading, the reason they're important sometimes is because they create a rule, and the rule is basically, my camera died, but what I was saying is the main thing that is important from a case is the rule. So the rule is what this case brought into basically like case law. So for example, if you're taking constitutional law and you find a case where somebody is growing marijuana in their backyard I kid you not, someone is growing marijuana in their backyard, it goes to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court says that actually you shouldn't be doing that because that affects interstate commerce. So the rule is that anything that affects interstate commerce can be governed by Congress, because that's what's in the Constitution, something like that. So you read 9 pages of a justice's opinion, it takes you 2 hours. At the end, you need to understand that the main point of this case and the case law that was established is that if something affects interstate commerce in any way in the aggregate, then Congress has a constitutional right to be able to govern that and make laws regarding interstate commerce. Then once you have the rule, you have to know how to apply it and when to apply it, and that's what the tests are gonna basically test your ability to do. I feel like understanding how law school tests you is just really important, because a lot of people don't realize how different it is from undergrad. You're never gonna need to cite a case, you're never gonna need to talk about what you actually read. It's all gonna be application and it's gonna be memorization. So understanding that just would have been so helpful for me when I was in my 1L early days, because I felt like I wasted so much time reading case after case and not really understanding what I was supposed to be getting from the cases. And yeah, it was just a waste of time. I wish I was more efficient, and so I wanted to make this video to basically relay everything that I wish I would have known, ways I wish I would have studied. So this is what works for me and how I study in law school to be above the curve. Again, if you're at the curve, that's amazing. You're gonna get your JD and you're doing exactly what you need to do. Almost everyone is within the curve. So keep in mind, if that curve looks like a C, you're doing exactly what you need to do. So this is how I study in law school, and this is what basically gets me above the curve. So first, I memorize that rule. Yes, if you want to read the case, if you need to read the case, some professors really do require you to do it. Cold calling is like a whole other thing, but whatever. For me, reading the case just isn't really helpful. Find what works for you, especially the first 2 months. You do really need to learn how to outline. Now I know how to outline, obviously, so I'm not really as focused on trying to make sure that I get that skill. For me, memorizing the rule is really important because, again, that's what's going to be tested. So the first thing is memorize the rule. How are you going to do that? I write down the rule on my laptop 20 plus times. And if your school lets you take the exam on a laptop, I would do that. And so I type it out because I know that when I take the exam, I'm going to be typing. If you have to write during your exam in law school, write down the rule as you study, because you want to get into that habit of basically doing what you're going to be expected to do. However, as I was memorizing, writing just really helps. So I have my iPad, I take my iPad pencil, and then I write the rule 20 times. I write it with looking, and then as I go through the study session, I stop looking at it and I try to make sure that I just remember it from my own memory. Obviously, kid you not, you need to write down the rule 20, like dozens of times. Like 10 times is not enough. You need to write it over and over again. So what I would do in my study sessions for rules is I would start with a specific paragraph of a rule. Some rules are paragraphs if your professors like a lot of words, whatever the case is. I had a professor that literally told us that the highest grade you would get in his class or in his exam is a C if you didn't write at least 3,000 words. Girl, what? I was memorizing paragraph of rules, pages of rules. So I would start my study sessions. This is what works for me in my little brain, okay? Your brain might be different. I would start with writing out the rule on my iPad, and I would write it out, like I said, 10 times until it got to the point where I didn't need to read it on my laptop, or I didn't need to reference like the rule again because it was just coming easy. So I would do this with 2 or 3 sentences, 3 or 4 sentences, until I got to about 4 sentences. Then I would start doing something else. A couple hours later, I would go back to it, and I would make sure that I can write it at least 5 times without looking. Then I would go do something else, whatever other study thing I was doing. At the end of the night and at the end of the study session, I need to make sure that I could rewrite that rule just as good as the first time around. I would rewrite the rule another 10 times just to make sure I have it down packed. Go to sleep. Okay, this is just how I need to memorize. This is what works for me, okay? The next day, wake up, do what I gotta do. As soon as I'm clocked in for my next study session, I would start with those same rules from last night because I need to make sure that I got it down. If I have them down, I would move on to other rules that I would start adding slowly. If I didn't have it down, I would stick with those rules because it didn't marinate overnight apparently. Then I would just keep reincorporating those rules until literally it just sticks. Like, you would be so surprised how much you can retain. Like, it will just stick. And then as you go on into your study session, you just keep adding rules, and a week later you're starting your study sessions with a page of rules, and it is what it is. And you'd just be so surprised. It just comes to you. It really does. So you start out with a few rules, and then you just expand all of it. It's all memorization. You have to memorize it. You have to memorize it, and it's gonna help you for the bar, so you might as well, you know. In addition to that, because there is so much to memorize, and you have like 4 classes, aside from your legal research class, but you have 4 classes, so you have to memorize a few pages of rules for every single class. Second thing that I cannot recommend enough, and I feel like your counselors and professors are going to tell you this anyways, you have to start studying for exams 4 to 6 weeks out. I know that sounds crazy. From an undergrad perspective, you don't really start studying for finals, and so girl, I was studying for finals a week out and I was still killing it. But in law school, you can't do that. You cannot memorize the amount of material you need to memorize by cramming it the night before. It's not gonna happen, and you're not gonna fail, because that's not what's happening this semester, okay? You're gonna succeed. So you need to study 4 to 6 weeks out, because not only are you memorizing every single session, but you're also applying the rule and identifying when to even apply it. So you have to know when to apply it, and then when you do apply it, you have to apply it well. And how do you practice that? Multiple choice questions. Your schools should provide you with supplements. Really popular ones are Lexis, Barbary, Themis. So those three I would say are like the pretty big three. Or is Themis part of Barbary? I don't know. Girl, I don't know. Whatever. I think Barbary just bought Quimby too, so listen. Lock in. You have to do hundreds of questions. You're gonna have a question bank, and you're just gonna drill and drill and drill and keep on drilling questions. Look at the analysis. And what really helped me is chat. And you got to be careful, obviously. Don't use chat for like your writing, that will get you kicked out of law school. But chat is really helpful for me, because I like the explanations on Themis. I don't love the explanations on Lexis Q&A, but what I'll do is I'll submit to chat the explanation from Lexis Q&A. I'll put it into chat and ask it to explain why the right answer is correct, and chat blows my brain every single time. Like, it is so helpful. So I actually do recommend using chat to like kind of be like a personal tutor. I'm gonna do 1,000 questions by the end of your first year of law school, for sure. Like, and that shouldn't scare you. Like, but when you think about it, Quimby, Lexis, Study Cada, Barbary, Themis, like, there's just so many supplements that it's just gonna happen. And honestly, you're just gonna get used to it, and it's the best way to study. Like, I'm telling you, you can read all of these cases all you want, like front to back, understand all of that stuff, but you need to learn how to apply the rule, and you're gonna have to do that through multiple choice questions. The next thing you're gonna do is, of course, practice essays. So practicing essays helps me so much. I did an essay. Obviously you have to do at least one essay for every single class, but girl, you better do more than that. So what helped me a lot was short answers, because I wanted to see more. Like, what helped me was like seeing different question types that could be asked in like different ways, if that makes sense. So some of your professors are going to give you one huge essay, and some of them are going to give you like one huge essay and then maybe 2 short answers. Just depends on your professor, but it just helped me obviously get ready for exams. So I thought that it was really helpful. And also, short answers help with making sure that you have the rule memorized. Do it with I would start with looking at your notes in the beginning for short answer, and then do it without your notes. Another thing that really helped me is memorizing the answers of the short answers and training my brain to think like how these experts are thinking. So making, like, I would memorize different connections like that Themis gave me, or that like the dormant commerce clause. Not only did I memorize the fact that, like, you know, there's a dormant commerce clause and like explaining that whole thing, but I also added some additional detail to that. And so in my essay, I would write about how the facts that I was given were actually considered economic protectionism, which is the exact opposite of what the Dormant Commerce Clause aims to protect against. So I didn't have to add that, but you know who gave me that idea? Quimby. Like, girl, you think I'm gonna know that? No, I didn't know that. You're learning. But the point of learning is to absorb and retain. And so once you start reading all these kinds of explanations and understanding like the Dormant Commerce Clause, which is in your constitutional law class, you're gonna start making these random connections that you didn't even think of once you read sample essays and sample short answer response. So best believe I memorized that. And then when it was time to take my exam, I would write based on what I memorized, and then I would also add more detail, because professors like that. Like, these are people that have their doctorates and they probably placed in their classes, and they're just law nerds. They like that extra level of analysis. It shows that you understand not only what the Dormant Commerce Clause is, but like you understand it to a higher level of like, okay, you can identify that this is economic protectionism. So you're gonna understand that more a little bit once you actually take constitutional law, but just keep that in mind. Lastly, you're gonna be a podcaster. Hear me out. This camera dies one more time. I would only do this maybe 2 or 3 weeks out from the exam. You do not need to eat, breathe, and live law school. I certainly didn't, because I'm a type B law student. That doesn't work for me. You need balance. But when the exam is really close, you need to take your voice memo app and you're gonna start recording the rule. Battery is XYZ. The elements of battery are ABC. And that's what you need to do for all of the intentional torts, like negligent, like you need to do it for every class. And it's okay. I'm not an auditory learner, but honestly, it really does help speaking it and hearing it, because then I'll give myself, like in my own like audio, I'll give myself like 10 seconds to repeat after myself, if that makes sense. I know a lot of people that listen to it on their way to school, in the shower, while they're cooking. It's just easy so that you can study active recall, especially when you're just like driving and you have like about an hour commute, anything like that. You can get some studying in. And I don't want it to sound like your entire life is going to be law school. Obviously you can listen to music, but realistically, like a week before the exam, you're probably going to want to do this. And for me, it was really helpful. Like I would play it in my car, I'll speak it into my phone, I'll plug it into my car, and then I'll be able to hear like rules that I have to memorize. And then I'll be like, okay, I'll pause it, or I input a pause like when I was recording it, and then I'll repeat it, and then I'll repeat it, and I'll say it out loud until I don't need to hear myself say it anymore. And then I'll do it again the next day and the next day. And so that way, when you have like a little bit of like a shower, cooking, things like that, that you don't have time to like sit down and study, you can still do a little bit of last minute studying. And honestly, do it like the week before, okay? It's helpful. I'm not an auditory learner. I'm a person that has to learn like by writing things out and doing it myself. Like I can't, like when professors talk, I need subtitles. When I watch Netflix, I need subtitles. Like I am not an auditory learner. That has been my kryptonite. Like when professors talk, I literally need to go after that class and like look at the lecture again. My professors don't let us record. None of my professors record their lectures, but I look at like that lecture class like through the supplements, and I'll just look at it through there, because I don't get it. I don't get it if I don't read it. I don't get it if I don't try myself. Those are all my tips. I hope this video was helpful. The main thing is find what works for you as fast as possible. My gosh, because those first 2 months, like those first 2 months were crazy. I would never ever again. Thank God I'm done with that. But you got this, okay? You got this, and your first year of law school is gonna be what you make of it. Please just take everything I say with a grain of salt and find what works for you so that you can be successful in law school, because we are not getting on probation. We're not failing out. We are gonna do what we need to do. It's gonna suck, but we're gonna do it because we can do hard things, and we're gonna be attorneys, okay? So thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you next time.